just pressed play to go live. I'm aware we might have one more minute to go. I just wanted to double check that everything was all set up and ready to go, which it looks like it is, which is fantastic. So we might get started. So welcome for those of you who are joining the Whole Health Project live, or if you're watching it a little later, welcome to you too. So my name is Tessa, and for the next 30 minutes I will be offering a brief introduction and an overview to the therapeutic technique called the Emotional Freedom Technique, also known as EFT or tapping. It's also known as a stress reduction technique. So that's what I'm going to be talking through today with you. So some of you might be familiar with this technique, and for some of you it might be completely new. But just a couple of things before we get started today. Just a little note on self-care. So some of this material that I'll be talking through today, it might be a little bit activating, potentially a little bit triggering for some of us, and this is completely normal. Okay, it's completely normal. So just to invite you to notice what's happening for yourself, maybe take a few moments and perhaps utilize some of those resources that you already have. You know, often we use our self-care resources sometimes on a daily basis. So some of those things, so for example, if you're noticing some feelings coming up or some sensations surfacing, you know, feel free to just take a moment maybe to glance around the space that you're in, perhaps noticing 5 things you can see, maybe 5 things you can hear, so tuning into some sounds, and maybe 5 things you can feel. So for example, you might notice maybe your feet on the ground, maybe your back resting on the back of the chair if you're sitting. So just doing a little things to take care of yourself. You know, it's really important that we look after ourselves and each other, especially at the moment. And also, if you have someone, a phone number or a contact, or someone that you trust and feel safe with, then you're making sure that you check in with someone if you're feeling a little activated. So, just briefly, a little bit about me. As I said, my name is Tessa, and I am a trauma-sensitive therapist and have been offering therapy to children, young people and adults for about 14 years now. And so a lot of my clients that I've worked with over the years have come from lots of different backgrounds and have accessed therapy for lots of different reasons. But predominantly I've worked with people who have experienced domestic and family violence, sexual abuse and exploitation. So a whole range of things in Australia and over in the UK. I'm also a yoga teacher and have been teaching now for around about 8 years. And I'm also trained in EFT. So I have done my level 1 and level 2 training in this with a wonderfully skilled and knowledgeable practitioner called Kadin. So she's based in Australia and she does offer training around the country, but at the moment it will be all online. So if you're interested, I'd highly recommend accessing support through her. So you might notice that during the 30-minute talk today, I might start to sort of gaze to the side or look down a little bit. That's just because I'm keeping an eye on the time and I have some notes that just here to prompt me, so I make sure I get through what might be useful for you today. So if you see me looking down, that's why. So the reason why I wanted to offer this today for this community is for a few reasons. Given the climate that we're all in at the moment, I thought it might be useful to just offer another technique that can be useful for us when we're experiencing all these different emotions, which is really normal. You know, I mean, what's happening at the moment, it's going to be landing with all of us really differently, in different ways and at different times. So I thought it could be useful to have another little tool in our belt for support. So that's why I thought I'd offer it. And also, I've used this technique, EFT, for myself. And I've also used it with clients of mine where it's been really effective. Because the really great thing about EFT is that it's actually quite simple and it's gentle. And some of the benefits that you might notice are actually quite quick. And the thing is that when we learn to do the basic sequence that I'm going to be talking through today, and we get to do it at home, that's actually quite empowering, to have a really effective therapeutic tool that we can support ourselves in our own environment where we feel safe, wherever that might be, to utilise that. So if this is something that you are interested in, and you'd like to explore it a little further, or you'd like to explore some things a little further for yourself, I'd really recommend linking in with a trained and skilled practitioner to do this with. So what I'm going to be talking through today is quite a brief overview and some tools and techniques that you can use for yourself even after you've listened to this 30-minute talk. So I hope it's going to be really useful for you. So as I said, today we're going to talk through a little bit of the background of EFT, how it's come to be, what it's useful for. I will talk us through the sequence of EFT. We'll do a little practice, and then I'll try to make sure that there's some time for questions or queries at the end for those of you who are watching live. So we'll see how we go, see if that's possible. Okay, so EFT. So now more recently, there's been some really robust research done into the effects of EFT, and it's showing that it's a remarkable tool to use for a whole range of things, as I mentioned before. And it might be using EFT for an emotional discomfort that you're experiencing or a physical one. What we also know, and I believe we've known for some time now, that the emotional and the physical aren't separate. So for example, when we experience, say, stress, our bodies do react, often pretty swiftly. So for example, if we're feeling a little stressed or a little nervous, so I might take myself for example here, what I'm noticing right now, because I'm talking to you guys live, which is wonderful, but it makes me feel a little bit nervous. So I feel that my heart rate is elevated. My breathing is a little quicker than usual. So my body is having the experience as well. Which is very normal. But if we think about situations where we might be experiencing, say, stress on an ongoing basis, and that might become chronic stress that has a whole host of other flow-on effects. So that's why using certain techniques to reduce the intensity of some of our feelings can be incredibly useful. Whether that manifests itself emotionally or physically, or even in our thought patterns and processes. So what else is EFT useful for? So it can be useful for reducing anxious feelings, stress levels, can be useful for chronic pain, so managing and reducing experiences of chronic pain, sleep disturbances, so if you're having issues or troubles sleeping or a bit wakeful, a bit more wakeful than usual, can be useful for that. Depression, so a whole host of things. I'm just having a little look at the time here. I'm just conscious of the time. So where did EFT come from? So EFT has been, the term itself was coined in about the 1970s. However, it is now seen as a combination between the Eastern meridian knowledge and acupressure and Western psychology. Okay, so EFT comes from the belief that when we experience something like a stressful or challenging or traumatic event, it can create something likened to a block or like a glitch in our energy system, which then prevents us and can prevent us from releasing that discomfort. And then it creates this feeling of imbalance or disharmony in our bodies. So with EFT, we do focus and we do name what our presenting challenge or issue might be, what emotions, feelings, sensations or thoughts accompany that, and where we might notice this in our bodies and what kind of discomfort we might notice in our bodies. We then tap, so with our fingertips, we tap on specific meridian points, so just like the ones in acupuncture, to clear the energy blocks that have manifested itself from that issue. Okay, so it is all about sort of decreasing the intensity of the original feelings that we present with. And what you might notice is then going through the sequence of EFT, which we will go through, if you then cast your mind back to whatever that presenting challenge was, you might notice that you feel quite differently towards that. Things might feel a bit more manageable. So as I mentioned, I did mention acupuncture before. So EFT is seen as being similar to acupuncture, but without the needles, which gives me huge relief. For someone that really struggles with needles, that could actually be something I could tap on. So we use our fingertips to gently tap on pressure points. So that's why sometimes you might see it being referred to as either psychological or emotional acupressure or acupuncture. Okay, so as with acupuncture, EFT stimulates different pressure points on our face and upper body to relieve and decrease the intensity of what it is that you're working on. Okay, so now it has been seen more recently, so with some more recent studies from the Western psychology model, it has shown that there has been a significant reduction in that stress hormone we know as cortisol, even in as little as after one session of EFT, which for me is pretty remarkable actually, because while we're practicing EFT, we're sending these signals to our brain that we no longer need to be in, for example, this survival mode, you know, in our fight, flight, freeze, submit or fawn, you know, because that may have been useful at some point in whatever experience that we're wanting to work on, but, you know, in terms of keeping us emotionally and physically safe, but perhaps we no longer need that anymore, you know, so it's not serving us as well in the same way that it used to. And the EFT is encouraging us to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. So the rest, digest, repair and restore. Okay? So how do we practice this? So what I'm going to quickly talk us through, actually what I might do is I'm going to talk through the sequence of what we do first, then I'll go through what the setup is. So the sequence being, now this can sometimes vary depending on if you've learned it before somewhere or someone has shown you different ways of doing it. So I'm just going to share what I learned in my training. So the sequence being, when we tap, we start with the top of our head. So just gently with the palm of one of your hands, tapping on the top of your head. And you come in between your eyebrows. So feel free to join in here if you like or not. Then coming to around about where your temples are, to the end of your eyebrows, under your eyes, under your nose, under your bottom lip. Then we come to our collarbones, so just at the start of your collarbones there. Then underneath so where your armpits are, so I tend to cross my arms here, otherwise it's a little bit awkward. So I cross my arms and just gently tap underneath. And then come to pretty much the last rib. So if you can feel for the last rib cage, so just gently tapping there. Then we come to our fingers. So starting with either hand, coming to the edge of your fingertips. So starting with your thumb, index finger, middle finger, and we go to our little finger. We do skip the ring finger. If you do it, that's absolutely fine. but it's said that one of the meridian lines, it doesn't end on our ring finger. But if you do it, there's no harm in that. Then you go to the other hand, thumb, index finger, middle finger, and little finger. And we take a nice deep breath in. Move if you need to. Okay, so that is the sequence that we go through. We're going to practice it again. But to set up what we're doing and why we're doing it, firstly, we do need to identify the challenge or the issue that we want to be working on. So this can include emotions that might be present right now. It might be sensations that are present or thoughts. Okay, so we're just naming it. We don't need to go into great detail. We're naming it. Then we test the intensity of that. So for some people, using a number scale resonates with them. So from a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being most intense, 0 being absolutely fine. If numbers isn't something that resonates with you, so sometimes I use numbers, sometimes I use another way to test how intense the feeling is for me. So sometimes I might liken it to a shape or like a size. Like I might go, well, it's this to start with. And then during the process I might go, well, let's kind of shift it to this. So instead of using numbers. Some people use like little feeling faces, colours, sound. So whatever resonates with you in terms of testing out the intensity of what you're experiencing. Then we create what's called a setup statement. Now with the setup statement, the goal of this is that we're going to acknowledge what the issue is. So what our challenge is, what we're wanting to work on today. Very quickly followed up with a statement of self-acceptance, regardless of what that issue was. So for example, and the more specific we can be, the more effective this technique can be. So again, so in terms of the setup statement, the first part is always focused on what the issue is you want to work on, quickly followed up by a statement of self-acceptance. So I'll give you an example. So how it would start would be, even though I have these, we can fill in the blank, so I have these anxious feelings, I still accept myself just as I am. Now that last part, the statement of self-acceptance, can be quite challenging for a lot of us to name, and to name it potentially out loud. So for some people they might say instead, they might say, so even though I have these anxious feelings, I am open to accepting and loving myself, or I will be okay. So whatever resonates with you. This will make more sense when we do the practice. So we create the setup statement, we go through the sequence that we just did before, which we'll do it again, and then we retest. So we check in, okay, what am I noticing now? What about the intensity of my feelings or sensations that were present before? Okay, and sometimes if those feelings are still there, so say for example you did the scale of 0 to 10 and you said, oof, my anxious feelings, they're at a 9. Finish the sequence and you're like, still a 9. In fact, it's a 9.5. So then we can do the sequence again. And what you might notice is that there might be some subtle shifts and changes in what you feel and how you feel. So I'm going to propose now we do a practice. Options here for the practice is that you are more than welcome to join in with me and feel free to repeat what I say. However, if what I'm saying is absolutely not how you're feeling right now, please, you can either fill in the gaps for yourself. So if you have a small challenge for yourself today, then feel free to fill that in for yourself. Or if you'd rather not say anything at all, and this is another great thing about EFT, is that you don't have to use words. You do not have to use words at all. We can just go through the sequence, no words at all, just tapping through. So it becomes more of a felt sense for you. You get that experience of EFT. So let me just take a little sip of water. Okay, so let's create a setup statement. So I'm going to do something for how I'm feeling right now, so that way it's effective and it's live in real time. With the setup statement, I forgot to mention before, we repeat it 3 times. And as we're repeating it, we tap on the side edge of our hand. Okay, so just like that. Then we change hands. We don't have to change hands if you don't want to, but we do it 3 times. We repeat it 3 times. Okay, so let's go. Okay, so feel free to tap along with me. So we start by tapping the edge of your hand. Okay, so again, and feel free to repeat or not, or fill in the gaps. So even though I have these nervous feelings and I feel it in my stomach, it's about a 6 out of 10. I still accept myself just as I am. So now switching hands. Even though I have these nervous feelings, I feel it in my stomach, it's about a 6 out of 10, I still accept myself just as I am. So one more time. Even though I have these nervous feelings, I feel it in my stomach. You can be more specific if you like. So I feel it in my stomach, it's about a 6 out of 10, I still accept myself just as I am. Now we'll go through the sequence. So on top of your head, these nervous feelings. So we just repeat parts of that setup statement, okay? So these nervous feelings in between your eyebrows. I feel it in my stomach. The outside of your eyebrows, so your temples. It's about a 6 out of 10. Underneath your eyes. These nervous feelings. Under your nose. They're in my stomach. Under your bottom lip. I really feel it in my stomach. Coming to your collarbone, start of your collarbone. These nervous feelings under your arms. It's about a 6 out of 10. Bottom of your ribs. I feel it in my stomach. Coming to the outside edge of your thumb, either one. These nervous feelings. It's a 6 out of 10. And your middle finger. I feel it in my stomach. Going to your little finger. These nervous feelings. Switching hands. It's about 6 out of 10. Index finger. These nervous feelings. Middle finger. Gosh, I feel it in my stomach. And little finger. About 6 out of 10. Now placing your hands down somewhere comfortable, taking a deep breath in and out. Moving or stretching if you need to. So now the idea is that I will just take a moment, and all of us can do this, is just to check in with how you're feeling. So for me, I am noticing that my breathing has slowed. So that wasn't something that I mentioned before, but that's an effect that I'm noticing. My breathing has slowed down. My heart rate has slowed down. I still have a little bit of this nervous feeling, and my insight to that is that actually I keep looking at the clock and I know that I need to finish soon. So I think that's part of that for me. So what I would do is probably after this, I'll probably go through and do another sequence and see how I feel after that. So that is a very brief introduction to a basic sequence of EFT. So again, you can use this in the comfort of a safe space, whether that's home or whether that's somewhere else. If you're out and about and you think, I would like to do a sequence, but I don't really want to be walking around tapping my head or other parts of my face, possibility can be is just to create some pressure to the insides of your fingers. So you might be sitting maybe in a meeting, or maybe you're stuck in traffic, or you're just noticing at home that you're noticing some feelings arise and you don't want to go through the whole sequence, applying just some gentle pressure to the insides of your fingers. Okay. Something else I wanted to mention to you before we finish up today is, now there's a lot of research out there on EFT from lots of different philosophies and perspectives. So I didn't go through all of them at all in any detail today. So feel free to do some little reading on different ideas around EFT and what it can be useful for. But I wanted to mention this, and there might be a way that I can post a link to it, but it's very easy to find online. And it's a little sheet. It's called EFT on a page. So I don't know if you can see that, but what it is it's talking through that whole sequence that we did just now. And it has a really helpful little illustration down here with the points that we tapped through. So it hasn't included the one on the top of the head, but that's okay. You can include that if you like or not. It's totally up to you. And again, this is something that can be used for a whole range of things. So for some clients that I've used it with, it has been really, really beneficial. One client who I've been seeing for quite some time, we've been using different therapeutic techniques, but she was experiencing some quite significant challenges at work. And so on her way to work at the time, she would notice her stomach in knots. She found it really difficult to even focus on driving. She felt really preoccupied with how she was feeling and almost feeling overwhelmed, which is really normal, when we get to that point. So she used it for, so before she left home, she would do a very short sequence. She would, if she had a chance, if she was in the car, she would do that. Then she would park up, and before she got out to go to work, she'd do very quickly just the pressure to her fingers. And she said by the time she walked in the door, she said, I could manage things so much easier, feeling so much freer. So I really hope that this has been helpful and useful for you today. I know that we're doing this live and that people can watch it back. If you do want to reach out, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions or comments or queries, I really welcome any of your feedback or questions. So either maybe making some little comments below, or perhaps through Facebook Messenger. I don't know how that works so well, as you can tell. Technology is not my strong point. Maybe something else I can tap on. But please do feel free to reach out if there is more information you would like to know. Maybe I can do another sequence through the Whole Health Project if that's useful as well. But please do take care with all of these different strategies. And as I say, I really hope it is helpful for you. And even in terms of the sequence, perhaps feel free to watch this back a few times. Sorry, I'm just going to click my phone because it just said that my storage is full. So please feel free to watch this a few times and either creating your own setup statement for yourself, which again is naming the challenge or the thing that you want to work on today, quickly followed up by that statement of self-acceptance. Okay? But if words are just feeling a little too much at the moment, it's really normal. It's really normal to just get a bit stuck. That's when you can also just practice the sequence with no words at all. Just having that experience that your body can experience, that slowing down. If stress is something that's in your life, just this slowing down, reducing those stressful feelings or anything else that might be present for you. Okay? So thank you all so much for joining me today. Just one more thing before it's half an hour, I've got one more minute. EFT is useful not only for us, so for adults or young people or children, but it is also useful for animals. When I was on my training, a woman was doing the training for her job, which was working with rescue dogs. So that's what she was going to take away from the training, to do a EFT on all of the rescue puppy dogs. And I have practiced it on our cat. He seems to love it. He seems to fall asleep pretty quickly. But so feel free to have an experiment with this, see how it lands for you, and I will hopefully see you all again through the Whole Health Project. And if it's possible for you at this time to make a very small donation for this talk, there is a link in the on the Facebook page. But if it's not possible for you at the moment, please I hope you can utilise this strategy as something that's helpful and supportive for you. So thank you again very much for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.